Afternoon, it's 1 o'clock and time for the St. John Daily Word. I'm Pastor Ron Genaro, and I welcome you this afternoon. Today is our Bible study edition. We are in the book of Exodus, so we will pick up there in Exodus chapter 17 in a few minutes, but we have several announcements for you. We want to remind you that the 7:45 service returns this Sunday, and there was cheering in the land. About 40 people were so happy on Sunday because they like to come and go home. I have my friends who complain to me that I don't have a 10:30 or an 11 o'clock service. They're like, you mean you can be at the restaurant before all the other churches? Yes. I go at 11 and they're just starting to serve. So anyway, Faith and Fitness exercise class here at St. John. That meets every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. in the fellowship hall. It's been going well. And we enjoy having that. They met today. They're going to meet Thursday. And we're going to be sharing some space here and there on Thursdays, at least next week in the fellowship hall. Popsicle Ministry has returned on Thursdays at the Schumacher property. That's we say 3 to 4. It's generally about 3:15, 3:20 till the last walkers go by, which is a few minutes before 4. But a lot of them were not walking. Cars were stopping. Parents were pulling over to get stuff with their kids and with them. We've had workers. We had guys who were like lawn service people. They just pull over and say, "Can we have some too?" That's what, yeah. And we have lots of folks who do that. Judy's been doing that as well since we started that. The Wake Up Call by Seedbed. You have the QR code you can scan. If you're not doing this, we really encourage you to do this. It started yesterday, a new series on the Gospels. You start with chapter 1 of Matthew, and it's a chapter a day until November 28th, which is like 89 days. And so the suggestion is you read the chapter before you do the devotion as well. Bible study today, every Tuesday, except we are going to have to miss 3 weeks from today. My wife is having a procedure done, and I need to be with her, and that's we're going to be doing that over in Bradenton. And it's minor, but I need to take the Monday and Tuesday off for that. Ladies First Friday is this Friday at 10 a.m. in the fellowship hall. It is open to all the ladies and their friends. We encourage all the ladies to come and be a part of that. They're just going to have a great time. They've got a good program planned already as well. My wife is the hostess, so you'll have some good food to have as well. Fellowship dinner starts this Friday, 5:30 p.m. in the fellowship hall. $5 per person. They're going to have pizza and a movie, and they are asking folks if they would bring either a dessert or a salad to share, and they're going to start the movie right away. So I will do the blessing. We'll bless the pizza, which every day you have pizza is a blessing. I had some yesterday, and when it's half price, it's even extra special. And so that'll be this Friday evening. Trustees will be meeting next Monday, September 8th, 10 a.m. in the fellowship hall. They have to meet in the fellowship hall because the education building will not be ready yet, but it's getting close. St. John Golf League, every Friday in September, 7:45. You need to be checked in and ready to go at 7:45. We tee off about 8:15, 8:17. Actually, that's our tee time, 8:17. But I need to pair people up, and we try to move it around. Everybody wants to play with one of the pastors and things like that. And so we just kind of do that. Then the fellowship breakfast, Wednesday, September 10th, 8 a.m. in the fellowship hall. All are welcome to attend. Please call Myron if you have any questions. Grief Share starts Thursday, 1 o'clock on September 11th. It says the education building, but it's really going to be, we won't quite be ready yet. It'll be close, but not quite ready yet. But they're going to meet in the fellowship hall, and then they will move over to the education building probably the next week. That will run for 12 weeks. They will do a double session the last week so that it will end the Thursday before Thanksgiving. Office hours are Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Parkway Food Ministry, the items that are always needed are non-perishables, peanut butter, canned goods, and cereal your donation boxes in the narthex. We got a new phone system. We just received some training on it this morning, and when you call, it will go to a menu, but you're not there very long. If you push 1, you go right to our office, to our secretary. And then, we have several choices. You have the office, you have me, and I'm the second choice. You just push 2, you go to the pastor. You push 3, you go to the music department. You push 4, and you go to Matt. And so you can leave a voicemail if we're not available, which we will see. And all of us actually have an app on our phone so that we'll be able to see voicemails as they come in and be able to respond to those things. Chancel Choir starts tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Here in the sanctuary. The rehearsals start. They're going to be singing in service probably the end of September, beginning of October. I'm not sure that date's been determined yet. I know the choir kickoff is in October. If you want to join the choir, this is the perfect time to start just coming and singing and working with them and enjoying that. And those are our announcements this morning, this afternoon, excuse me. We're going to begin with chapter 17, but before we do that, we're going to have a word of prayer. Gracious God, we thank you and we praise you for your presence, your blessing, and your goodness and mercy that are with us each and every day. We pray for those not here today who would normally be here. We pray your blessing and your healing and your strength for those who are part of our congregation that are in need of your presence and your strength. We ask that you would speak to us and through us as we study your word today. Especially in chapter 17, as we see your provision and your encouragement. We ask your thanks, or we ask your presence in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you. I know the Trinity. I don't know why I stumbled. I've only had a couple of cups of coffee today. It's been a busy day already. All right. So, we are in chapter 17. And yeah, there I am. I wanted to be sure we were live, and we are. The book of Exodus. And so in chapter 16, last week, we talked about manna and how it was provided and the provision for that, and how it is a little bit strange, too, about meat. The impression we have as we read chapter 16, it looked like they got pheasant every day. But we know that's probably not the case, because later on they will complain that they don't get enough meat. And God will send them as punishment more pheasant than they can eat. And when they eat it, it's rancid. There's an interesting dynamic going on here of parent to child. And God is the parent and Israel is the child. And they will misbehave. And God will have to discipline them and chasten them. And there'll be times where Moses, representing the people to God, will bring their complaints. And God will say, I'm going to wipe them out and start all over again. And Moses will beg God not to do that. And there'll be other times where Moses will come and say to God, wipe them out. Get rid of them. And we'll see that as that plays out. Now, we're at chapter 17. From the wilderness of Sin, what a great name, the whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses. This is going to be the pattern. They don't get what they need or want, and they're going to complain. Give us water to drink. Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? But the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So Moses cried out to the Lord, what shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me. Stoning was an ancient way of putting someone to death. When you hear that, you think of, okay, what size, what's the first thought that comes to mind? Picking up stones and stoning someone. All right, most of us don't have very large stones, right, around. And, when we think of stones, we think of the little things that, they're decorative. These are fist-sized stones, or a little smaller. You could pick it up and you could hurl it like a baseball or a softball. That kind of size. And in a time when you did not have advanced weaponry, a stone was your basic weapon. It still is. You can kill somebody if you hit them over the head with a stone. And that's what they would do. Now, they wouldn't hit them over the head with it. They would put them in a pit, or they would put them against a wall of some sort, and they would hurl them as hard as they could, and you would break bones, and you would kill someone with it. And they were very good. Farmers in that time frame, or people who raised their agriculture or their animals, would become pretty adept at throwing stones to get a predator away and all that kind of stuff. It's a basic weapon. And they will develop stoning pits, and it will become a form of capital punishment. You took someone outside the camp and then you stone them. We'll see that in the Exodus accounts. And so it's a legitimate complaint that Moses has, or worry. They're going to pick up stones and stone me. We even have that into the New Testament. They pick up stones and they stone Paul and Barnabas. I had a professor in college who said, in his opinion, he thinks that Paul was killed and God resurrected him, because the surprise the next day when Paul showed up, they thought he was gone. They thought he was dead. Or at least that's the inference that the text seems to make. The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" So Moses is told in this instance, take the rod, walk out in front of everybody, and the stone I tell you to strike, you strike that, and what will come out of the stone? Water. Now, Moses will lose the right to go into the promised land, because there's going to be a second instance of where they're going to need water. And Moses will be told not to strike the rock, but to speak to the rock. But Moses instead strikes it rather than speaks. And he loses the right to go in. And there are passages in Scripture that try to explain that, and that they're saying is the rock was Christ, that Moses struck Christ, and that's his punishment. So he doesn't go into the promised land, he only gets to see it from Mount Nebo in Jordan. He looks in and he sees the land, and then he dies. That's 40 years from now in this account. But it's probably not 40 years that he loses the right, and we'll see that as it unfolds. Any questions on this water from the rock? I don't know how it worked. Must have been some sort of hidden spring or something that God knew was there. He strikes the rock splits open, and water comes out. But it's got to be some system, because remember, the size of this people is at least 1 million people, and they get enough water. And that's the problem. There's so many of them, they can't have enough. They have to go out every day and gather the manna, except for on the Sabbath. They get the day before, they get a double portion, and that's the only day that the manna will last longer than that day. but they just don't have the resources. They are a mobile group, large group. Listen, some of us who came from large families, we know how hard the logistics are just to go on vacation. I remember a trip. It seemed like it took forever to do it, and it really wasn't. It was from where we lived in northern New Jersey to where my grandparents lived, and I hadn't ever met my grandfather until I was 8 years old. I had never met him. Back in the olden days, in the 1960s, where you didn't travel, and it wasn't, riding a plane was a big deal. And my mother was estranged from her father and stepmother. There was some estrangement there. They weren't happy she married an Italian. They were Irish Catholic. She married an Italian man. They didn't realize that my dad was really Scottish and English and Irish and only a little bit Italian. He was half Italian. I'm quarter, but it's the part that says Genaro, the last name. So, and people had their prejudices back in that time frame. Absolutely. And Irish Catholic and Catholic did not mix. They didn't go to the same worship services. They didn't live in the same areas. I lived in an Italian neighborhood. Mrs. Matucci on one side, Mrs. DeBritta on the other side. That's what was there. And we were Genaros. And they used to complain that we didn't speak Italian. That has followed me into adulthood too. But so what happens is that they're going to have these struggles, and the water, the rock, and all of this are going to play out, and they're not going to be. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult, and the people will complain and all of that. I don't know how I got over to the traveling and the logistics. We had a station wagon, and there were 3 kids, my mom and my dad. And my dad had the most miserable experience driving because we had 2 flat tires. Not 1, 2. And so we had a flat tire on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, east of Philadelphia. He had to pull over. To get to the spare, it was down in this well thing. He had to pull and remember how suitcases were in the 60s? He had to pull everything out, put a really bad jack on, jack the car, all with a wife and 3 kids, and I'm the oldest at 8, on a turnpike. And he does this, he jacks the car up, he changes the first tire, he has to pack everything up, but he's got to put the tire back in, pack everything up, drive to a service area, pull over, and get everything out, get the tire, and patch it. He could patch it. They weren't radials yet, I don't think. About 1969, somewhere in there. I might have been 7, so it might have been 68. And then repeat the whole process. Drive, okay, get the tire back on, take the spare off. Now, they could do that at the service station and did. That cost them a few dollars. And then drive, and then the other side in the middle, it did it again. He had to do the whole thing again. What was supposed to have been like a 7-hour car trip back then took like 12, 13. Fortunately, both of the flat tires occurred in daylight. But, that's still with me, and that's over 50 years ago, almost 60 years ago, that I just remember. And I just remember I heard my dad say words that I didn't always hear him say. And he was in the Navy, so he knew how to say those words. Bob just said amen. So think about moving 1 million people and having all of food and all of the water and everything else, and you got to pack up and you got to move. And that's why it says also they moved in stages, because it just takes a while to move. And it takes a lot of water. Water is life. It has always been life. And so you have to have enough water. You have to have good water. You have to have sweet water, right? Remember, the water was bitter before, and that was awful and bad. God made it sweet. So they were able to drink that water and all of those kinds of things. All right, so any questions on those first 7 verses? Wow, 20 minutes, 7 verses. Then, in verse 8, Amalek came up and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some men for us and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." All right, so he's got the staff. So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek. Then, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill, so they're watching the battle. And whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. So he's got the staff, and he's taking it and holding it up. And while he's got it held up, Israel's winning. But what happens to an 80-year-old man or any person? You don't even have to be holding something. Your arms get tired. So his arms would get tired. He's lower. Then the Amalekites are winning. So they come up with a solution. But Moses' hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side, so his hands were steady until the sun set. And Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the sword. So as long as Moses had his hands up in the air, holding the staff, they were winning. So when he was too tired to do it, they put a stone, they put him in a seat, and then they held him up for him. And then ultimately they prevailed. I have seen and been in places where this was used as a devotion of how we should, as the church and as the people of God, should treat our leaders. And that is, we uphold them. We support them in whatever way is possible in order for them to accomplish their ministry. I'm going to say something some of you may or may not agree with, especially out there. When I was taking some classes for a doctoral program that I did not complete, I enjoyed having time and my kids. But there was this introductory class, and it talked about the practice of ministry. And it put succinctly what I had already felt, and that is, what the church does is, the church doesn't, this is the controversial part, you don't pay me, but you enable me to accomplish the ministry I'm called to do. So that you give me money, yes, and a place to live because I live in a parsonage, but that allows me to do the ministry so I don't have to worry about those things. It's just a slight thing, but in some churches, people act like, well, we pay him a salary, he needs to do what I need him to do. Do you understand the difference in perspective? And so I don't see you couldn't pay me enough to do the things that I do, because what I do is in response to serving God. Now, do I mess up? Absolutely. Before we started, somebody had left a voicemail in our phone system that wasn't working properly, and I didn't get it. But the new system is working and up and running, and it should work much, much better. So we have those kinds of things, and I do have some people who joke with me. Initially, they would joke with me, and they go, "Oh, you only preach 1 hour. You only work 1 hour a week on Sunday when you preach," because I at the time was doing 3 services. Well, you work 3 hours. You're 3 times the minister than I've ever known. But what we do on Sunday is nothing like it. That's a small part. And some people don't understand. It takes a lot of work and research and sitting at your computer and doing some things to get ready for Sunday. I spent 8 hours on anywhere from 4 to 6 hours on Tuesday and 4 to 6 hours on Thursday getting ready for Sunday at home. Do you know why I do it at home? Because yes, the phone guy called me on my cell phone, called me on our system, and I didn't recognize the ring. Catherine was there. I said, "What is that ringing?" She said, "It's your phone." So I got my phone, and so I answered it, and it was phone guy. He says, "The nursery is locked, and you need a phone in there." "All right, I'll be right there." And he hung out and waited about, I thought it would be 2 minutes, but for me to get from my office to there were 5 interruptions in that. So I was there more like 7 or 8 minutes. I thought it was going to be 2. "I'll be right there." And I walked in. I said, "I'm so sorry." He says, "No, I've seen your office." Because, that's the way it works. It's just the way it goes. My wife will say to me, "I need you to come home right away. Right as soon as this is done, I need you to come right home." I said, "Okay." She said, No, not the way it works for you. I need you right away." Because it just happens that way. And that's going to lead into our next thing too. So we are to be supportive of our leaders. I have to be supportive of people over me in authority. In our case, we have a presiding elder. I report to them. I sent an email the other day to schedule our church conference. And I had to ask permission to hold it on this date, this time, and who would run the meeting. And he had to approve that. He sent me that yesterday afternoon. And I uploaded it today. I was supposed to really upload it yesterday. The other pastor who's running my meeting, I'm going to run his meeting the week before. So those are all in November. But we have to have that permission. We also have a conference superintendent. And then we have a bishop above that. And I'm responsible to all of them, as well as to you and to our leaders here. And I do try. If you're in the hospital and you let me know, I will come and see you. Right, Mike? As long as you let me know. And you get a lecture when you don't let me know sometimes. Well, but I'm never too busy for that. I like doing that. Because that's part of my ministry too. And I do have people. I participated in our first annual conference in the ordination of 3 individuals, one of which I didn't know. He just said, "Would you sponsor me? I don't know anybody." Sure. So I did it, and Pastor Debbie Mack from Frostproof, we both laid hands on him. He wanted to have sponsors, and he didn't know anybody. There were 2 other people. They came to me that night, and the night of rehearsal, and they said, "Ron, would you please be my sponsor?" I said, "Sure, why didn't you call me?" "Well, I know you're busy, and I didn't want to bother you." I said, "I am never too busy for that." In fact, one of them called me last week because he needed something on sacraments, and he needed a little help. He said, I know I'm ordained, but I want to make sure I'm doing this right. And I said, "And you called me? You're the sacrament whisperer." I do a class on sacraments for our newly ordained people and things like that. And so that's the other thing. I have actually ministry responsibilities for our annual conference as well. And next year, when I go to Africa for those, I think it's like 8 or 9 days, I'm going to have help here with our leaders because I need to go and I'm representing our conference. Okay, so we did through verse 13. Verse 14. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this as a reminder in a book and recite it in the hearing of Joshua. I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, a hand upon the banner of the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Then Amalek would be wiped out, back and forth. It's part of the text. Okay, chapter 18. Jethro the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses. Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law took her back, along with her 2 sons. The name of the one was Gershom, for he said, I have been an alien in the foreign land, and the name of the other Eleazar, for he said, the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came into the wilderness where Moses was encamped at the mountain of God, bringing Moses' sons and wife to him. So for safekeeping, he had sent them away. That's not in the movie, the 10 Commandments. In the movie, his wife is with him the entire time. But no, he sent her to be with her dad and his children to be there. Why do you think that would be? Why do you think he would do that? To protect them. That's right. To protect them. And what else would it also do? If Pharaoh grabbed them and imprisoned them, that would give Pharaoh leverage over Moses. It's protecting them, but it's also protecting his task and his mission. So now they're coming back to him. It wasn't he sent her away like he divorced her. He sent her away to be watched over. And by the way, Eleazar, I love that name. The God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Eleazar also can be the servant of God. That's another translation of it. And Janine did not let me use that name for any children. Phone just keeps going, I'm sorry. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came into the wilderness where Moses was encamped at the mountain of God, bringing Moses' sons and wife to him. He sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and your 2 sons. Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed down and kissed him. Each asked after the other's welfare, and they went into the tent. Then Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had beset them on the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. Jethro rejoiced for all the good that the Lord had done to Israel in delivering them from the Egyptians. So he's celebrating Israel's success. I also think, because Jethro likes Moses, at least we think so, he's kind of proud of his son-in-law, right? You know, and he should be. And those of us who have sons-in-laws or daughter-in-laws, if we have good relationships with them, they become like ours. We watch over them. Yes, sometimes I've had people say, I'm not going to call my son-in-law my son-in-law, I'm going to call him my son-in-love, or my daughter-in-law, my daughter-in-love. Although the dynamic between a mother and a daughter-in-law is interesting sometimes. I'm watching it. And a father to son-in-law can be an interesting dynamic as well. Before my mother-in-law died, there was this shirt I found. Actually, I found it just after she had died, and I showed it to Janine. It was on Amazon, and it was a T-shirt. And I told Janine, I said, if your mom was still alive, I was buying this shirt for me. She said, for you? I said, absolutely. Look at what it says. And it says, I'm my mother-in-law's favorite child. And then she looked at it and went, yeah, you're probably right. My mother-in-law said to me one time when she was in the hospital, she said, I'm not going to call you my son-in-law anymore. I'm going to call you my son. She said, because I love you and care about you. And then she said these words. you're not getting a share of the inheritance. Janine will get it, you'll get it through her, but I'm not rewriting the will. It's fine. I didn't expect anything. So he's got this good relationship. Jethro said, "Blessed be the Lord who has delivered you from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods because he delivered the people from the Egyptians when they dealt arrogantly with them." And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses, his father-in-law, in the presence of God. Bread with Moses' father-in-law. What event do we do that we use bread? Communion. Yeah. There is this fellowshipping. I have another place where I've actually preached a sermon called God's Dinner Party, where Moses and the leaders of the tribes come and they fellowship with God and they eat a meal that God presents to them. And if you think about it, yes, we go buy the bread, we go buy the juice, but it's not Ron who invites you to that meal. It's not Ron's meal. It's not the people who prepare it. We call it the Lord's table, Holy Communion, Eucharist. All of those names can be used interchangeably. The Lord's Supper. All of those, we do all of those things to draw us closer to God. We in our tradition say it is a means of grace, that we come to it and that Christ is present by faith because we bring our faith there. And when we celebrate that meal, it is a time of repentance and encouragement and strengthening. Now that's not exactly what this is here, but it's a precursor to it. Fellowship at a meal is important. That's why when we do all these meals, right, we joke, we're Methodists. We know when we die, we have to bring a pot, a dish to pass when we go to the pearly gates. We joke that way. But we eat, we share, we fellowship. Churches do that because it's hard to eat with people you're mad at. Well, sometimes around your own family dinner table you can do it, but it's not easy to maintain that. And in the ancient world, when you ate together, it meant that you were at peace. And so Moses and Jethro, his father-in-law, and Aaron and all these other leaders come together, and Jethro is celebrating. Now he's the priest of Midian, and he's celebrating. Now, Aaron's not yet made the priest. He will be. It's not far off, but it's drawing that all together. And Jethro is going to give some advice, too, in a little bit later on. The next day, Moses sat as judge for the people, while the people stood around him from morning until evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone while all the people stand around you from morning until evening?" Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make known to them the statutes and instructions of God." He's not been given the law yet, but he's got a pipeline to God. Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good." What? Moses thinks he's doing good. He's rebuking him. It's not good, and we're going to see why. "You will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone." Much like holding up the rod, he couldn't do that alone. He needs help. And so they're going to come up with this way. And Jethro, the priest of Midian, his father-in-law, is giving him advice. Now, I would want to suggest to you, he's probably the only person who could give Moses advice in this situation. Because Moses is the leader. Who else would tell him how to do it? They're afraid to tell him how to do it. But his father-in-law, that relationship is kind of like this, but he's still like this, right? Even my sons-in-law, whom I love, I care about, they'll call me, they'll ask me advice, or, hey, I want to do this, what do you think? My sons do that, I'm their dad. I do have something funny. When my son-in-law, who's in Missouri with my daughter, his name is Joe, he's married to my daughter Rachel. When he called me out of the blue, I had never met him, he called me to ask permission to ask my daughter to marry him. And I talked with him for a few minutes. I said, Joe, I've not met you, so here's the deal. I'm giving you provisional permission because you've got this plan all laid out and you're going to ask her tomorrow. And he's like, yeah? What's provisional mean? It means that as soon as we're done, I'm checking my schedule and I'm going to see about a flight and I'm coming out to California to meet you because I need to meet you. And I'm sure it'll go fine because Rachel is a good judge of character and I love Rachel, but you will treat my daughter right. And he's like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I flew out a week later. I spent about 4 days with them, and then I came back. And I decided I never wanted to move to California. No offense. I know some of you have lived there, but oh my gosh. We decided to go somewhere, and it took 2 hours to go 20 miles because of the time of day. And it was 4 lanes on one side. It was an 8-lane highway. 4 lanes. 4 lanes. And we moved like this. Two hours. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You should represent the people before God, and you should bring their cases before God. Teach them the statutes and instructions, and make known to them the way they are to go, and the things they are to do. You shall go. You should also look for able men among all the people, men who fear God, are trustworthy, and hate dishonest gain. Set such men over them as officers, over thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. So it's a hierarchy. And it's a training system. But notice what they have to be. You should, men who fear God, trustworthy, hate dishonest gain, meaning taking advantage of another person. And so you're going to set up over 10, over 50, over 100, over thousands. So he winds up with this system. So it's almost like a court system. If the person over 10 can't handle it, then he goes to the 50, and then if the 50 can't handle it, goes to the 100. If the guy over 100 can't handle it, then they go over to 1,000. And if they can't handle it, then they go to Moses. So he's sort of like the Supreme Court. These are disputes over, you took my tent, peg. These are arguing over, we would call them trivial, but they were important to them. Jethro was very smart to tell Moses to do this, and he would wear himself out. I have people around here who are always telling me I'm going to wear myself out, Mike. But I never take on more than I can't do, at least right now. Huh? No, I don't get mad at you. I love you, Mike. Huh? You take numbers. Let them sit as judges for the people at all times. Let them bring every important case to you, but decide every minor case for themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. That's one of the things. There are people who bring things to me, and they'll say to me, Pastor, we need to do this. I'll go, well, I need to take that to this committee. or this group of leaders. Well, don't you have the authority to make those decisions? Ultimately, I might. But I don't. I respect our trustees. Do I bring stuff to you that sometimes you wonder, why didn't you decide this? You'll ask me, what do you think? And I'll tell you what I think. But I want you all to make that decision, because if I have to make a decision that makes somebody unhappy, I've at least got a whole committee that says, we don't think we should do that. And sometimes you give me wisdom that I don't, I don't have a problem with doing it. Well, what about this, this, and this? Oh, well, I hadn't thought about that. And so we work together to do that. In this church, we have a representative form of government. We have committees that handle certain things, and then we all come together at the church council, and if they've got a decision or a recommendation that they want their backing, they get that. There's 30 people on that church council which share in that. We are not a congregationally led denomination or church. There are some where every person has a vote. We don't work that way. We're a representative form of government. We're very similar to the United States government, which is a representative form of government. People don't always get that. One vote, one person. Yeah, kind of. That's in the popular election, but it's not in how we govern ourselves, because it becomes chaos if you do it the other way. It's not a great way. No, we had somebody one time that wanted everything to go to the church to vote. I'm like, no, we don't work that way. They didn't even know that at that time in that group, they were called district superintendents. The district superintendent said, you either do this the way I want you to do it. If they don't vote the way I want them to do it, you're going to do it anyway. Because I respond to that person too. I felt a little bit squeezed. That was during the pandemic on an issue. So they're going to spread the responsibility around. Let them sit as judges. Delegation. If you do this, and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people will go to their home in peace. So it spreads it out. So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men from all Israel and appointed them as heads over the people, as officers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times. Hard cases they brought to Moses, but any minor case they decided themselves, because they're little things. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart. He went off to his own country. Now think about this. Some of you I know are in this range. Moses is like 81, 82 when this is going on. To 20 years, because it's a lot of weight, it's a lot of decisions, it's a lot going on. All right, so we're going to get part of 19 done, but not all of it. Let's see how quick I can go. Any questions on 18? This dividing up the responsibilities. I had a person that taught me this phrase, many hands make light work. When we do stuff around here, when we do like treasure trove, I hide. No, I don't hide. Sometimes it feels like it, but some people think that. But I empower the leadership to do what they need to do. And I can't second guess. I have to back them up. I tell every employee when I hire them, I tell them the same thing. You work with me, you work for me, but I give you freedom as long as we're on the same page. We have to be on the same page. But do not be afraid to make a mistake. I will not yell at you in front of somebody in the congregation. I might yell at you privately. I may have harsh words. We'll deal with it. But I don't want them being afraid so much so that they won't act, because they have to act. Sometimes they have to check with me. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll do stuff I told them they could act, and I'll have to back even decisions I don't necessarily agree with, at least with people publicly. Or I might just say, that's not a good one. We need to rectify that and fix it. I'm the pastor here. I'm a board chairman for a nonprofit here in the area. I have to kind of smooth things over sometimes there, but I can't make all the day-to-day decisions. They would like me to. It's not my job. We've had an executive director. When we didn't have an executive director, then I was stressed because I was having to make official decisions there as well as here and working. When I was called for jury duty on a case I did not want to sit on, they had to bring us in one at a time, and they had 140 people in the room for that trial. It was a capital offense case. And so they had people go home that were above a certain number and told them to come back the next day. They would go through that and they were choosing the jury. And so I was like number 48 or 49. I had to wait through all of that from 8 o'clock in the morning until when I finally went in, which was around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I went in and they sat me down and they said to me, these are I'm just going to tell you this part I can say. They just said to me, "Are you the only minister?" And I said, "Well, no, I have," at the time, I have 2 associates. But they said, "Well, but they're part-time." And they said, "So you make basically all the pastoral decisions?" "Yes." "So if we called you for this jury, you would have to work in the evening and you'd be preaching on Sunday?" "Yes." Then they said, "Well, we've decided to excuse you and thank you for your service at this point." I was like, whew. I was going to get kicked anyway because I knew many of the people involved in that case. I didn't even have to point that out. On the 3rd new moon, after the Israelites had gone out of the land of Egypt. So, 3rd new moon, what would that tell you? 3 months. Yes, Joyce, because we're on a lunar calendar at this time. And three new moons. So it's at least 3, maybe 3.5 months. Okay? On that very day, they came into the wilderness of Sinai. They had journeyed from Rephidim, had entered the wilderness of Sinai, and camped in the wilderness. Israel camped there in front of the mountain. Now, what mountain is that? I already know. They're in Sinai. What's the biggest mountain? Mount Sinai. That's easy. Then Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the Israelites, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples. Indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the Israelites." So Moses came, summoned the elders of the people, and set before them all these words that the Lord had commanded him. The people all answered as one, "Everything that the Lord has spoken, we will do." Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord. Then the Lord said to Moses, I am going to come to you in a dense cloud in order that the people may hear when I speak with you, and so trust you ever after. One of my professors in college, one of my favorite professors, we're still in touch with each other, said this is a fatal mistake here. What they should have answered was, how can anyone keep everything that you say? And cry out for mercy. He said if they had done that, there's a possibility that Christ would have come immediately and redeemed the world. And we wouldn't have had all that other history. There's a chance. There's a theory that says that. Because what do they say? We're going to do everything you tell us to do. Are they going to be able to do everything that he tells them to do? No. Because they still have a problem. What's the problem? It's a 3-letter word. Sin. Sin is the problem. And they have no way of dealing with that. They're going to try to have ways of dealing with it, but it's going to be flawed. Because only the ultimate way that it can be dealt with is that the Messiah comes and redeems them. I'm going to get the whole chapter done. I feel so good. When Moses had told the words of the people to the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and prepare for the 3rd day. Because on the 3rd day the Lord will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. You shall set limits for the people all around, saying, be careful not to go up the mountain or to touch the edge of it. Any who touch the mountain will be put to death. No hand shall touch them, but they shall be stoned or shot with arrows, whether animal or human being, they shall not live. When the trumpet sounds a long blast, they may go up on the mountain. So that's the all clear sign. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people. He consecrated the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, prepare for the 3rd day, and do not go near a woman. If a woman is in her time of menstruation, it was thought at this time it made you ceremonially unclean. In Judaism, there are always 2 beds or 2 bedrooms in an observant Jewish house, and when the woman is on her time of her menstruation, she goes to another bedroom in order to keep her husband ceremonially pure or clean. I'm just telling you what they practice. On the morning of the 3rd day, there was thunder and lightning, as well as a thick cloud on the mountain, and a blast of a trumpet so loud that all the people who were in the camp trembled. So who blew the horn? I've had people say, well, Gabriel did. We don't know. It just says a trumpet sounded. So God had somebody on the mountain blowing the trumpet. So loud it made everybody tremble. Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God. They took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended upon it in fire. The smoke went up like the smoke of a kiln, while the whole mountain shook violently. As the blast of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses would speak, and God would answer him in thunder. So the people heard thunder. When the Lord descended upon Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, the Lord summoned Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. Then the Lord said to Moses, go down and warn the people not to break through to the Lord to look, otherwise many of them will perish. Even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out against them. Moses said to the Lord, the people are not permitted to come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, set limits around the mountain and keep it holy. The Lord said to him, go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you, and do not let either the priests or the people break through to come up to the Lord. Otherwise, he will break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. So what we have here is they're being consecrated. The people are being consecrated. God is going to speak to Moses directly. But Moses is still not going to see God, not here. He doesn't see God. But the people, so there's this thing that's being set up. It's terrifying to them. The trumpet blows, it scares them. They tremble. And it keeps blowing, right, to get them up to the mountain. There's thunder, there's lightning. The ground is shaking. When God speaks to Moses, Moses hears him. But what do the people hear? They hear thunder. Does that remind you of anything in the New Testament? When Jesus is baptized, the Spirit descends as a dove. A voice speaks from heaven and says, "Listen to him. This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." But then it also says, some heard thunder. Some heard the voice, some heard thunder. Let him who has ears hear, right? And eyes see. That's what Jesus says with his parables sometimes. Sometimes people hear thunder when they should be hearing the voice of God. And sometimes it's because they're spiritually blind. That's what's happening. So the people hear the thunder to protect them because God is speaking directly to Moses. Moses is God's guy. This is what leads me to always say, I love David, a man after God's own heart. But have you considered Moses, who is this put upon 80-year-old guy who lives the first 40 years of his life in privilege, the second part of his life as a shepherd, which was the worst job among worst jobs, and because he was raised as an Egyptian. Remember in the story of Jacob's family? Tell them you're shepherds because the Egyptians don't like shepherds. It was a demeaning job. And so they are shepherds, and that's why they put them out in the land of Goshen. That's where you could feed the sheep and keep them there. And so Moses, raised as an Egyptian for those first 40 years, then becomes a shepherd. That's like, what's Mike Rowe? That's like getting the dirtiest of dirty jobs, okay? And now he's going to have another 40 years shepherding people who he's going to refer to as stiff-necked, stubborn people who are going to fight amongst themselves, who are going to challenge him, who are going to challenge his brother Aaron when he is picked to be the high priest, who are going to be mad at God. Sounds like modern day life, isn't it? We have not changed. And the only way we change is how? Is to have an encounter with Christ. To come to faith and to be able to say, Jesus is Lord, and mean it. If we say, that's what Paul tells us in the book of Romans. If you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord and has been resurrected from the dead, you will be saved. That's the gospel. But it's saying it, but believing it. What's that? It can be. Because we can get all kinds of knowledge, but yet not believe it. You know, my wife always jokes with me, every time we fly, well, not every time, but it used to be early on when we would fly, she'd say, I really don't know how this works. And I said, well, you know, it's physics, and the air runs over the wing and under the wing, and you get lift. And she says, I know, but I really want to just trust that it's going to work. If I don't understand it, how can I trust that it's going to work? Well, yeah, I finally just trust that God gave the knowledge to Orville and Wilbur Wright, and they got it right. And if we're on a Boeing or a McDonnell Douglas or whatever the plane manufacturer is that they got it right, okay, and that we have a good, competent pilot, that they get it right. But believing in God and trusting in God is sometimes the hugest and biggest step we have to take. Because we grow up being taught to depend on ourselves, to conquer everything that we need to on ourselves. We call it American exceptionalism too, in some cases, or independence, where we are pull ourselves up by our bootstrap kind of people. We say that. Some of us grew up hearing those kinds of things. And I believe in all of those things too as a national identity. But I also believe that we have to be one nation under God, that believes in God, that trusts in God. And our founders of our country had that. Now, some had it wrong. They were deists, and and there were even a few who didn't believe in God. I'm not sure Thomas Jefferson really ultimately believed in God. May have been a deist. He's the guy who, he took his New Testament and he cut everything out that he doubted, and he wound up with 27 pages. Yeah. Now, that wasn't for public consumption. They found that Bible after he was dead. But that's the one he read, not the other one that he laid his hand on when he was sworn in as president twice. So you have that. And yet Ben Franklin, I'm not sure he believed in God. In his writings it doesn't seem to. And yet he makes reference to God. So there's this public faith too. But I know that there are signers of the Declaration of Independence who are Orthodox Presbyterian ministers, 3 of them. One from New Jersey. My people. And so there, we are people of faith. I had a pastor I worked with, and he really stole this from someone else, but I like how he said it, because he had modified it, and that is, inside every human heart there is a God-sized hole that only God can fill. We try to fill it with all kinds of other things. Augustine, writing in the 5th century, wrote the opening words of a book he called the Confessions, where he talked about him coming to faith. Our hearts are not at rest until they are at rest in Thee, O Lord. And I love those words, because we are at times perpetually moving. But we will only find true rest, true hope, true life in God. The people were supposed to get that as they went to Mount Sinai. They didn't always get it. In some ways, in some cases, what it is they saw the sights and they were moved by that, but they didn't believe in their hearts. So that the external kind of moved them. There are people like that in church too. I had a person one time who was a member of the church who didn't believe in Jesus. But the previous pastor had taken him into membership. And they said to me, I believe in God the Father, I believe in the Spirit. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. What's wrong? Jesus is the key. We are Christians because of the work of Christ. We are invited to stand before the Father and to receive the Spirit because of the work of the Son. And I spent my entire time while I was there praying for that individual and helping. On my last day, they came and they hugged me. They said, we tolerated each other. And I said, I hope we did more than that. And she says, oh, we did. You have me thinking. And I'm a lot closer than when I first met you. We are God's people. And because we are God's people, we have to demonstrate belief and trust in God. The children of Israel said the right words, but did they believe in their hearts? Moses heard the words. Now, it might have been that the words were obscured from everyone. But we know that when Jesus was baptized, some heard the words, some heard thunder. I hope I would have been one of the ones who heard the words. And I hope all of you would be as well. This is where I remind you that God loves you, this church loves you, and I love you as your pastor. And I want to thank you for being here today. Let's close in prayer. Gracious God, dismiss us with your blessing, with your presence. Be with us as we look at the Ten Commandments next week, and as we read of everything that took place in your giving of those commandments and how your people had responded. We give you thanks. We praise you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you. Have a great day. We'll see you on Thursday in the Daily Word, and on Friday for the ladies. They'll be here for First Friday, and then the meal on Friday night, and then church on Sunday. 2 services. Pray for me. I have to be in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock Saturday night. Bye now.